All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Allison, and I'm here with George.
Hey, we back in the building. What's up, everybody?
We have been at each other's throats this morning, but it's all good because here's the thing. Because of our amazing dynamic and
Exactly.
our friendship, we're like brother, sister, and we give it to each other straight. So,
I'm be real. I am responsible for the stress this morning. I am Mr. Last Minute.
uh-huh.
Um, AQ, I know you had everything planned. She has everything lined up. I'm doing my best, but again, because of our relationship, I think we can move past it. But she did let me know that I am negative 504 points right now.
504 points.
Jesus. Okay, so got some work to
We're
do.
good though. We're good though. The
Yeah,
thing is I know you so well, and
yeah.
so like a fun fact is we were supposed to start recording at 10:30, but I put on your calendar at 10 because you always roll up at the last minute and it drives me insane. But anyway,
Yeah.
here's the thing. We don't record these back to back every week. And this
Right.
is like a little, I don't know, it's like a little secret.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we don't. And based on our travel schedules, and you obviously don't live in LA, we have not seen each other
It's been a while.
in like a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to catch up with you
Yeah. Lots of life has happened.
because we are both living life right now.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so that's what we're doing today. We're catching up, we're talking about life. And I think one of the reasons that we started this podcast was because our kind of like life updates and our conversations always kind of come with like lessons, and I think you and I are so good at like
Yeah.
giving each other feedback and things to consider. And so I'm really excited to kind of have this happen in real time based
Yes.
on the life that we've been living
Mhm.
in the past month and a half or so.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because both you and I are, I would say, like kind of living life in the romantic sector.
Yes.
Work is kind of on autopilot for both of us. We're crushing it. We do big things, but we're both kind of like in either uncharted territory or new territory in the love life. So I'm
Yeah.
going to kind of talk about what's been going on with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um so I guess what's interesting, I'm obsessed with patterns and like how things repeatedly show up.
Mhm.
And so what I've noticed kind of the past couple months is like exes reaching out.
Oh.
And like when I say exes, I mean everything from like going on a date with one person and they reach out, or like someone that you dated, right?
Mhm.
And so I always find this when this happens, it's interesting because we know that I'm intentionally looking for a fulfilling romantic partnership.
Mhm.
And so I've started to notice kind of like, oh, this batch of like exes or
Yeah.
former players in whatever the game of love
Yeah. Yeah.
reaching out. And I feel like it's that opportunity, like the universe is asking me, like, are you going to fall for that temporary validation that
Mhm.
comes from like, oh, they want to see if the door's still cracked.
Hey, I mean, of course they do. But it's also like I think you said it's that acknowledgement of, hey, I've grown a little bit more.
Hmm.
I'm also a lot more aware of what I'm looking for.
Hmm.
And so it's a real decision
Hmm.
that if you make the wrong one, it's kind of like on you a little bit, right? Like, so I'm gonna dive back into this patterns. I'm gonna go back to what I know, what
Yeah.
kind of is safe and comfortable. And then if something, let's say a negative pattern were to come up,
Hmm.
it's like it's tough to really kind of point that frustration anywhere
Yeah.
else, besides yourself. But I think I, some people have exes that obviously reach out and kind of come back into their life.
Hmm.
And I think you also just need to be ready to field that, right?
Hmm.
And have some level of growth to be like, okay, I understand what's happening here and I have the power to choose how much energy I give this.
Yeah. It feels good to either say like, no, or just dismiss it. I mean, like I got a text message from someone I went on one date with and they're like, "Hey." And I'm like,
Just hey.
"Just hey." And I'm like, "Obviously I'm not going to respond to any." I know. But then I did get a text message with someone I did date and it was very much like, "Hey, I've done some work." Like, and bless him, right? Like
Mhm,
did some
mhm,
healing. That sounds great. But at the end of the day, like I've moved on and
mhm.
I have no ill will, no bad intentions, but like that's just not, I'm not looking backward.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's the universe being like, you know, are you going to fall for that validation or are you advancing to this like next frequency of self-worth? So that's how I like to look at it, because I think it's that really like that decision that you get to make.
Yeah.
But the punchline is, and you already know what the punchline is because you're my homie and you've been with me through all of this, but I actually reached out to one of my exes.
The ex.
The ex.
Oh,
Yeah. I would say the ex, like in this chapter of my life for sure. And, you know, it's like a year and a half, right, of on and off, and we had spent the last like 6 months not speaking. And that was really my decision because he was really unavailable. And like I said, I was ready for kind of, I didn't need to jump into like, oh, this is a relationship, but I needed to like progress. I needed there to be some sort of indication that this wasn't going to just perpetuate into like a situationship over and over and over again. And so I removed myself from that situation. And I really did a diligent effort at healing and dating and taking time and space. And I ended up having a conversation with a very good friend of mine. And I was kind of explaining the circumstances. And he said, you know what's interesting is he's like, it sounds like you have unanswered questions. And I really liked that because I think that's what caused so much anguish. And I think oftentimes you are in relationships and you're like, I know that I have all the information I need, right? And like we're good. Like I'm fine breaking this off and not going anywhere else. But this situation with this person, I did have unanswered questions. And some of those questions that I had that I've now that I had identified was it just the wrong timing and circumstance? Was it, just kind of the worst case scenario of that?
Like things outside of your control, basically.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Have I totally shown up and shown him how I can be as a partner? And I was leaning more towards yes, but like I said, circumstances and timing. One of the other unanswered questions I had was, can he be the partner that I need and want? And I think that a lot of my experiences in the past have been, I would say that this is probably a toxic trait of mine, is that I fall for potential.
That's where I was going with it. Like, can he be the person that you need and want? Almost assumes that he wasn't before. Right, or something was lacking in that space.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, what's going to be different now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dangerous space to be in.
Yeah.
I think I actually saw a clip the other day that said, if you realistically, like everybody kind of, again, goes off potential. If I do these 2-3 things for my partner, they will change. But the clip was basically like, when you meet your person, just assume that's who they are. And are you comfortable with that? Because if you are, then I think it removes a lot of that anxiety and a lot of that. You're almost reserving that warmth and those good feelings for a future date. So that means you're going to go through and not necessarily settle, but you are going to be not fulfilled up until some event, and then all the pressure is on that event.
So true.
And then that the individual that you're in the partner or in the relationship with, if you're a good communicator, will feel some of that, right? Because they'll be like, okay, there's something I'm lacking here and I need to work on it. And then once we get there, we should be good. But then if you get there, let's say you change, right? And then you want something else. So it's just kind of this long-standing kind of chase the...
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's like, are you satisfied with the day-to-day, or are you going to be satisfied if something happens in the future? And like really differentiating between those two.
Yeah.
And then one of the other unanswered questions I had were, have any of the red flags changed? Which I think usually red flags don't change.
Yeah. It's tough to change red flags also like in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But anyway, I had reached out and you did a really good job of prepping me. I didn't tell many of my friends. I think 2 of my friends knew that I was going to. And that was really a concerted effort on my part as well, because my friends held it down for me when I was really in the depths of being hurt by this situation.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt like I needed to owe it to my friends. Like, this is this is a decision on my part, and I'm going to be responsible for myself for the consequences. So like any soothing that I need to be doing is going to have to come from myself, because they already held it down and have spoken their piece.
Yes, exactly.
But you were one of the people where I, trust you, and I remember you saying like, AQ, you cannot afford another heartbreak. And I said, I hear you, and I'm going to make this decision, but I'm going to go about this decision very intentionally.
Yeah.
And so I reached out. We ended up having this amazing conversation, of course, because we have such chemistry and we like deeply care about each other as people.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily anticipate it would be that amazing, but those conversations of someone who you like still have connection with, it's like a drug. Like the dopamine that comes from that is insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from that conversation, what I felt like was agreed upon was that we both felt like there was still more potential there. And we both kind of had our eyes set on what the next iteration or chapter could be. And so like I didn't anticipate that, but I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was intoxicated by those words, because those words are like a drug.
Yeah.
And they are a bitch sometimes.
Yeah. For sure. I remember speaking to you shortly after, and you just had a different energy, you had a different light, right? And also I think a lot of the doubt had been removed, right? I wonder what this is gonna be like. What's the conversation going to be like? If it's gonna be quick. I also know, just in general, well, I feel like a fear, if you're going to reconnect, is they say like, oh, nope, I've moved on, or oh, there's somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. And yes, that can be a fear, but that also can be relief, right? Okay, so I know that chapter is closed.
Yeah.
I need to move on too. But in your case, where it's like, I've been waiting to hear from you too. And
you asked me, you were like, what are the things that you feel like you are afraid to hear? And I told you.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I didn't hear those things. I heard, the complete opposite. So it was very, like I said, intoxicating and hypnotizing. But I think the thing that I really have become aware of is, especially if you're going to go back to a situation with someone who you've had kind of a romantic experience with and it didn't work out. Like, I know that this is like such basic advice, but there has to be change attached to those words.
Yes.
And I did see, tiny movements of change, but I think I was so aware of the pattern that him and I have had in the past. And so it allowed me to be almost like a witness versus reactionary.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying that it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't wish that these patterns would rehappen. I would hope that they would be able to like adjust and like grow, because that's the space that I feel like I'm capable in with this person. But those patterns really did start to repeat themselves. And instead of reacting or protesting or getting upset, I think I was less hypnotized and less reactionary and more just like witnessing and accepting.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is part of like healing and growth.
For sure.
And I think what's so interesting about this experience is I've just become really cognizant of our traumas. And I think for me specifically, this is the work that I know that I'll work on my whole life, which we've talked about. But I recreate the same experiences that I had with my dad in my romantic relationships. And I would protest for my dad's affection. I would protest for my dad's attention. I would protest for consistency from my dad.
Yeah.
And so that's what shows up in my romantic relationships, because so badly I want to heal that. And so badly I want to soothe my inner child and say like, you are loved. Your love comes consistently.
Yeah.
Obviously this is
Yeah.
still
It's
triggering.
for sure.
It's my life work, and I know that.
Yeah.
And even though I can intellectualize it and articulate it, obviously it's still
Yeah.
tender.
It's very tender. For
And
sure.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's really okay.
Yeah.
And I'm still healing, and obviously, like, this situation's still fresh, but I think that I've used this experience to really understand just even more clarity around the things that I need.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's been like, I will not dismiss my experience. Like, this situation has provided me a tremendous amount of anxiety. I've
Yeah.
felt abandoned. All of the things that when you go into situations like this, they do perpetuate the experiences that you felt. So,
Mhm.
like, as a kid, I probably felt anxious when my dad didn't pick me up on time or when I didn't know when I was going to see him, right?
Yeah.
And so my body goes back into those same
And
reactions.
yeah.
I'm a 30-plus-year-old woman, and like I still feel like a child sometimes, like begging for attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like I'm getting better, and
Yeah.
I hope one day that I feel even more secure, and that, but this is what this experience has brought me, and like
Yeah.
these are the lessons, and so badly I want to be like, I'm so grateful. Like,
Mm.
am I there yet? No,
Yeah.
but at least part of it feels that way.
Yeah.
So the things that I've really learned, and these are my lessons,
Yeah. Yeah.
are consistency and integrity are non-negotiable for me.
Just draw that line,
Don't introduce me to an energy you cannot maintain,
Mm.
because my nervous system is hypervigilant. And if I notice where like inconsistencies, or we talk every day and then one day it's just like we don't get me wrong, we have to be able to be human beings and have human experiences.
Yeah.
But like, what I need from my partner is for them to be aware of my nervous system and to care about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that I need them to be there for me every waking second. That is a
Right. That's
insurmountable
exactly
task,
Mm-hmm.
because I have to also learn to self-soothe. But if this other person is going into an area where it's like so much different,
Mm-hmm.
then I want them to be able to consider my feelings and be able to articulate that and say, yo, I'm going to be in the trenches for a couple days. I see you. I care about you. And I'm so looking forward to connecting, but I got to do this.
Yeah.
Amazing. I can handle that.
Yeah.
Because that's communication, and I know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
What makes my nervous system trip up is when I don't know what to expect and I don't have an answer as to why this person is acting so much differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super triggering.
Mm-hmm.
So consistency and integrity. So like, if you say that you're going to do something, I need you to do it.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as like, hey, if I say that I'm going to call you at 7 and it's like 7:30, like, there needs to at least be like a message.
Yeah.
Because that's my nervous system.
Yeah. And you don't have to fight that. There's no problem. And I think the awareness of that is key, because I think sometimes where we have those like built-in desires for somebody to change, right? Almost part of that is, okay, am I willing to maybe relax a little bit on some of my, non-negotiables to give space for this change, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's, opposite in your, like personality styles, right? But I think that's also a really empowering, mindset to have, because at the end of the day, like I truly believe that if somebody is really like head over heels, madly in love, and somebody will drop everything for their loved one, like that energy just doesn't disappear, right? And people make adjustments for individuals that they care about.
Yeah.
And if you set the expectation, communicate that, and it's not followed through, then like, yeah, you're well within your right to have some of those feelings, or at least wonder, hey, what's going on here? Did something change?
Yeah.
And if it did, cool. I would just love to know about it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sitting here left wondering and in my head a little bit. making assumptions.
Yeah,
right?
like I don't want to decipher actions. I want someone to be able to articulate if something isn't the plan that we spoke about.
Yeah.
I think too, like emotional safety really plays into this.
Mm.
And that consistency is how I feel the most emotionally safe. Like there's so many other things that create emotional safety, but for me, I know, like I am so crystal clear that it is consistency that creates that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that can happen. I've also experienced this now because I think what also happens when you open yourself to relearning lessons or looking at lessons differently, the lesson shows up in different ways. And I had this lesson show up with like a friend as well in this time frame. And I really needed to rely on my friend who has been there, but also inconsistently. And it doesn't work for me. I don't feel emotionally safe to feel like I can put my vulnerabilities like in your hand.
Yeah.
And I'm a very emotionally delicate person. I know that. So that's why I feel like I always need to proceed with caution when building trust with someone. And I'll give you an example of like both of these are like, oh, bummer. But I think you have done a really great job of creating emotional safety in our friendship. And I will never forget this and the way that this felt until the day I die. And it's going to make me.
Oh.
But I really needed you.
Yeah.
And I was flying from LA to New York. And I had a layover in Detroit airport. And I literally will never forget where I was in this Detroit airport when you dropped everything for our set manager is bringing me Kleenex. This is so kind. But this is the real shit. Like I know that people think are like, oh, she's crying. It's like, it's just tender. And that's okay. It's okay. But you were in the I was in the Detroit airport, and I think that you were like out, and it was like DEFCON 5. I was like, George, I need you. Like, I really need you.
Yeah.
And I sat bawling in the Detroit airport, and you were just present for me. So thank you.
Oh, I got you. I got you. Aww.
But I think that that's like, obviously you don't pull that trigger.
Yeah.
Unless you really need it. And I would never pull that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a great example of like knowing what emotional safety feels like.
Yeah.
And having someone really be there to receive it.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for teaching me that lesson.
Oh, I am honored.
I think these are the most tears I've had on the podcast so far. So I mean, maybe we're just like really getting down to the nitty gritty.
Hey, I feel like each episode and as life is happening too, because you know what we're about to catch up on, and I'm going to get into some updates for myself too.
Yeah.
And again, the whole point of this podcast is like, let's really talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
And that includes us. That includes how our life is going.
Yeah.
That includes our shortcomings and things that we go through. So
into me, I see means that there's a lot of things that you're going to see about me. And that's okay. All of them are worthy and valid and real, and nothing is bad or good. They just are.
Yeah.
And me getting choked up doesn't make me weak. That doesn't make me too sensitive. For me, what that means is that it shows me that I care. And why would I not want that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to wrap up the lessons that I've learned, and we're going to get on to your story because I know it's a lot juicier. But okay, so 3 other lessons that I've learned in this situation. This one I think is so key, and I think it's a really good differentiator. But what you think of someone and how they make you feel can be 2 very different things. So for instance, if you're like, I want a partner who is charismatic and driven and passionate about their career, that is what you think of someone. Those positive attributes don't necessarily correlate and correspond to how they make you feel.
Yeah.
That ties into emotional safety as well, but we've already covered that.
Yeah.
We're composed now, so we've already covered that. The other lesson that I've really learned is I'm the prize. Like,
Yeah.
damn, I am such a good partner.
Yeah.
I have worked so hard on myself. I love myself. I think I am so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to accept also the flaws that I have and the opportunities and
Mm-hmm.
all of those other things. But like, because I want partnership, I think that I'm really intentional on being a good partner.
Yeah.
And like, I am such a prize.
Yeah. Don't forget that. And
Can't forget that.
Can't. Especially if you're going to enter that scene where you're going to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You have the potential to give someone your time, energy, your heart.
Yeah.
You have to know that you're handing over gold here. This isn't.
Yeah.
We're not just playing a game here.
No.
You know. So, yeah.
I'm not giving you weak ass shit, and like I don't want weak ass shit.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep that.
So if you want to show up, with some dope stuff, great. If not, also great.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not gonna create a big protest or like expect you to act differently. I feel like I'm so much more comfortable now accepting behavior and not feeling like I have to be like, well, I'm never going to talk to you again.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, it kind of just is what it is. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll move accordingly as well.
Exactly.
And then the last thing that I think is my, like, based on my, you know, my trauma and the healing that I need to do is like, but this concept of like unavailable men and just like having to prove myself and being like, look at how good I am. Look at how well I treat you. And it's like, I'm not enticed by that anymore. That doesn't feel like a challenge that I want to partake in anymore. And like, that's how I know that I've been healing and growing is because it doesn't, when I see unavailability, it doesn't make me want to move. And what I mean by that is like, I don't want to lean in and like try harder. I'm okay just staying there. Yeah. And that's a really, really good place for me to be. Mm-hmm. And that is my update. That is where we are current day from the last time that we spoke.
And I think, you know, I've obviously been there and I've kind of seen it from afar and we've been in communication on how it's been going. And I just want to let you know, like, I'm super proud of you. Because I remember how just it was a tall task just to like, and me, obviously, I'm a little biased. I'm your, you know, close friend, and I want to be able to, you know, like look out for my homie, right? And so anything that creates a negative energy, I'm trying to shield. But I also know that you need this, and you need to figure some things out, and you need to go through this so that you can get to the other side. Yeah. And so I think you handled. And you're handling it great because you've done the work and because you are intentional in what you're looking for. So, just don't stop. Keep it going. You know?
I really am appreciative of also like your support because I think the reason I didn't tell a lot of my friends is because they're like, you already know what's going to happen. And like, I was willing to make that estimated risk. Yeah. And like I said, I don't feel this like triggeredness of being like, I can never talk to this person. I really hope that we will remain friends and like have a good relationship going forward. It's just going to look differently. And like, that's also something I'm okay with now that I probably haven't been. And so, like I said, yay me.
That's growth. Hey, we'll take it. We'll take it.
Okay. So let's catch up on you because
snap.
I've been getting a few messages and the girlies want to know what has been going on with Miss Taco. That is Miss the Taco. Nickname. And I just want to hear that and maybe some other news that you have, actually.
Yeah, there might be something else going on. But no, Miss Taco, bless her heart.
Bless her
sweet
heart.
Girl. But that fajita sizzled out.
Oh no!
I mean, it was also just a very. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, this is fun, this is cool, but we both were very like reserved and was like, this is just a fun thing. And I'm glad that again the communication was on point. There's no ill will feelings or anything like that. And
did you have like an official like, hey, thanks, but no thanks?
Pretty much. Okay, I mean, cool. It was. Like, you know, a couple days later, really, it was like, it was a cool night out. I had a lot of fun, But as we got to talk a little bit more about where we are in life, what we're looking for, just kind of saw that like, oh, maybe that was a fun night and we can leave it at that. And I wish you the best, you know.
Great growth.
So, hey, that was cool.
But let's get to the juicy
let's
stuff.
get to the juicy stuff. So, you know, as you know, I mean, I adopted more of a mindset of the whole relationship thing. We'll see if it happens.
Yep.
Right. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to focus on taking care of my family. Focus on being a good father, and kind of just like put it in the universe's hands to see if this partner thing happens. As opposed to let me be intentional. Let me actually try to find someone.
Would you say that you maybe surrendered a little bit?
I did.
Okay.
For sure. Yes, I did.
These lessons in this podcast are the gift that keeps on giving.
It's real, you know. Gotta take your own advice, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I've been on the apps, and as you know, I do a lot of traveling, and that's also some of the insecurity for me when it comes to dating. Finding somebody that's that I don't have to feel like shame or embarrassed, the fact that like, hey, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm also a father. I'm also taking care of my family, and I hope that those things don't like make you run out the door, right? And I just had to realize that, well, if they're gonna run out the door, let them run out the door. They're clearly not the ones for you then, as opposed to let me try to change one of these aspects so that I can make somebody else feel comfortable.
Yep.
So there was definitely a lot of learning and growth there, but
I think a lot of that too is rooted in just acceptance. I think sometimes there's a little shame around that. And like when you have shame, I think that you project it on other people, and it becomes amplified because you're like, oh, everyone else is assuming this thing about me. And it's like, no, I think we have to give people the benefit of the doubt that they're willing to accept you for you. And if they're not, doors right there. Bye.
Gotta go. For sure. And I think it kind of gets back to your earlier point. It was like, you know, I'm the prize, right?
Yes,
and I'm the
you
prize as
are.
I am. Not in the future when I change this or when I get this or when this is solved. It's like, no, right now, today. So I met somebody on the apps.
There's still hope, everyone.
Still hope, right? The app. And speaking of app, one thing that I found with Hinge specifically, you know, you can send like voice, you can send text or you can do voice notes. And I'm a fan of the voice notes because one,
you got a podcast voice.
So I hear. But I think for me, it's just more genuine, right? If I'm gonna sit and type a whole message to somebody, I'm gonna like edit it and think about it, and I should probably change that.
Did I use the right word?
Exactly. Does it sound good, right? But if you press that record button, and you start talking, like it's gonna come out, and it's gonna come out exactly how it's supposed to, very genuine, right? And you know that got pretty warm reception to that. So
because
somebody,
I think it's about being human too.
Yeah.
And like we stare at our screens and we interact with screens all day long. And I think when you can break through that humanness and like actually be somewhat human, and voice is obviously a human characteristic. So yeah, I think that's a good tip. I don't know what my reaction would be if someone sent me a voice note. I feel like I would get the ick, but like maybe that's just something I need to work on.
Yeah, I mean,
depends on what he's gonna say.
And
if he was like, "Hey, girl, hey," and I'd be like, "No, I'm good, thank you."
Right. And I mean, there were some people that might have been uncomfortable with it, but for me, again, I had to remove their expectation, what they thought, and it's like, no, this is more for me.
Love that.
And so I met somebody a little over around a month ago, and it was just very, genuine. And when we met, we went out for dinner, and then that just turned into like, it was one of those nights where like it kind of continued very organically, right? Dinner led to, oh, let's go get some desserts. You want to go out tonight? Like, you trying to go dance or something? Okay, let's go do that. And I know we've talked on like prior episodes on
when the first date goes bad.
First date go bad, right? So like, or leave while it's fun, right? Don't drag out the whole evening. But this was just it was again very organic. Neither of us felt really pressured, and I just my biggest surprise in all of that was, I think it was, let me take a step back. So I don't want to say, well, maybe men in general, we hear all the, I don't want to date women that have baggage, right? that assumes we as men don't have baggage, right? But I think the truth is we have baggage too. And
Woo.
especially if we have been hurt before,
Yep.
especially if we have been vulnerable with someone.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't work, it's like, I ain't doing that
Can
shit
we talk
again.
about this for a second? Because listen, women get hurt, men get hurt if you're in heterosexual relationships. Whatever relationship you're in, people get hurt.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that when men get hurt, they carry that with them for so long. I dated a 46-year-old man last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was great out of the gate. I don't
Yeah.
mean to take away from your story,
Yeah,
but
no,
I
no.
think it's important.
Yeah.
And we got in our first kind of like rift, like, something, there was, miscommunication or whatever. And he reverted back to his 23-year-old self and referenced him getting hurt by his college girlfriend and how he can never trust anyone. I'm like, sir, you have lived 23 years
Since then.
carrying this.
Yeah.
And you're taking it out on me?
Right.
Like, I'm a completely different person. We're in a completely different situation.
Mhm,
And it was like, it's wild that I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Because I'm willing to be wrong on this.
Yeah.
But I feel like men carry the hurt from like the first girl that broke their heart for so much longer.
Yeah, that might be true for sure.
And
well, I can
stop
speak
making
to.
us pay for it.
Well, I think well, it might be a little bit of like making you pay for it, but I think what really is happening is, like, hey, I've tried to be vulnerable before and it didn't work. So now I'm going to, even if I enter another situation that feels good,
Mhm.
I'm going to be a little reserved
Mhm.
because again, that's still in the back of my head,
Mhm.
right? And so,
And then did you walk into this situation feeling this way?
yeah.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons. One, I think just trying to quote unquote protect myself, right?
Mhm.
I don't want to feel that hurt again.
Mhm.
But also, to be frank, it's just, kind of been doing it for so long that it's just the natural way to enter some of these relationships.
Yep.
But I think with her, the main thing that I noticed is, like, one, she's a really good listener.
Love that.
And she was able to like check me in some of my expectations. We had gone out a couple times after that initial date,
Mhm.
and I was telling her things like, well, like, this is the first time I like missed somebody in a while, or like, and we both admitted to each other like, I kind of thought this was just gonna be a fling thing. We don't live in the same city, like, so we both were kind of surprised.
Uh-huh.
That like, oh, there's still some like leftover feelings here, and then for me, it's like, oh shit, what do I do with this? What do I do if I miss somebody?
Having to provide solution for something. You don't have to do shit with it. You can just miss someone.
Hey, and I can, that's, we'll get to the lessons part of that too. But again, it's just that wiring, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, this is new. This is a different feeling. This kind of feels very familiar. I've been in love once before.
Uh-huh.
And then all that fear starts setting in.
Uh-huh.
What if this happens again? Blah, 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 right? And, she said something like, again, just very impactful and kind of stopped me in my tracks.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, hey, all those things are normal. Fear of expectations. How is this going to work?
Mm-hmm.
Blah, 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 blah. All normal.
Mm-hmm.
However, they complicate things.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we try this? Why don't we just enjoy this? Why don't we just stay here?
Can't wait to have.
And I was like, oh shit. And I feel like I'm I got a little bit of a mouthpiece, and I feel like I can hit people with one-liners, and she goes tit for tat with me. I'm just like, she hits me with the same lines, and I'm like, hold on, who sent you? First of all, where are you from? Like, what is this about? But the main thing that I guess I'm realizing in this is, yeah, it's okay to just allow this to be.
Mm-hmm.
And with some of like the issues that I guess I've had in the past with prior relationships, I'm mixing that logic with emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So men are more likely than not a little bit more logical, trying to piece and structure
Mm-hmm.
the relationship, and so that we feel kind of comfortable and safe, right? And in this case, I'm thinking of I'm worst case scenario, and then I work myself backwards. So what happens if she feels this way? What happens if she's concerned about this? Let me try to patch these holes in this road when I don't even know if we're gonna go down that road. I don't even know if we're gonna turn, I don't even know if that road is worth if that's our journey, right? And so that's a lot of work
Yeah.
without the other person involved in this, right? And their input and what they think we should be doing for, you could be doing all that work for nothing,
Mhm.
right? And so I had to kind of realize, like, okay, George, like, why am I actually trying to solve these quote unquote future problems? Is it because you're bracing for something, right? And kind of bracing for that, I want to check all these boxes, or at least want to have some of these conversations so that when the negative thing comes in the future, I will feel better, or
It's like
it'll
saying to
be
like brace for a car accident. And I'm not saying that your relationship, but I'm just saying like when you would get in that mind frame of like, oh, this is going to go bad. Can you brace for a car accident?
you told me that the other day, and I was like, wow, because we get in the car every single day.
Uh-huh.
We don't get in the car and hold that steering wheel super tight, hold the let me position
What's this thing
myself.
called? The safety,
Yeah,
the
where you
handle?
the handle that you hold, like you hang your coats on or whatever, and like, let me hold this for this 20-minute drive.
Right.
We get in the car and we just chill. We play
Yeah.
music because we know we're going somewhere. And for me, that was like very insightful, AQ, and it really checked me too. I was like, you're right. Like, what am I bracing for? Because the real is, like, if you manifestation is real,
Mhm.
right? And if you're preparing for a negative event, that a negative event will come, and it will still feel just as bad when it happens, if it surprises you or if you knew it was coming around the corner,
Yeah.
right? So again, another thing to kind of like check myself. I'm like, okay, well, George, don't revert back to those bad habits,
Mhm.
especially with this, because like this could be something,
Mhm.
right? And you owe it to not only yourself but the other individual in this to like just be here, be present.
Mhm.
And I think part of it too was, I we'd gone out on so many different dates, and there's also some people around me that, just in the the back and forth of life and going out and being social, like she's come along with me some places and
Mhm.
like had to meet some of these people,
Huge sign, by the way.
right? And
Yeah.
so, and I'm a little nervous, like, oh my gosh, like what are they gonna think? But everybody is like a huge fan of her, right?
Mhm.
And so having that kind of validation is key,
Mhm.
because obviously your friends are a little bit more biased and they're going to want to protect you, but they also will shout at you and let you know if something is good for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And one of my close friends, and kind of my business partner, I work with him. He got a chance to meet her as well, and he just said something that was just so insightful that I think allowed both of us to just breathe a little bit. We were getting ready to travel, and he was like, "Look," he literally grabbed us both on the shoulder, and he's like, "I can feel the energy between you two. Like, you guys are gonna miss each other, right?" And we're both like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Okay, let's just think about this." He said, "Like, what work did you do to get to this point?
Uh-huh.
Like, really think about that. Did you, because you guys met on an app, right?
Uh-huh.
You randomly went out somewhere. It randomly like went well. You saw each other a few more times. So he's like, universe is at play here. So if the universe got you to this point, trust and believe in those same powers to like map out the future for you.
Mhm.
And your job is to just be present and go along for the ride.
Beautiful.
And it's almost like you just like tension cut the room. I was like, oh, everybody can breathe now. And I think we just both needed to hear that, because again, I think for her, she also, spent some time focusing on herself, and had some of those same kind of worries. But we both also knew that, like, wow, this is different.
Mhm.
And like, again, how are we gonna make this work? Just because we care and we
Yeah.
want it to. So I think for me, I just really had to take a step back and be here, be now, be present, so that if push comes to shove, and let's say it doesn't go the right way, I can say that I showed up as my honest, genuine self,
Mhm.
and I did not withhold anything, because that type of regret, I know what that feels like.
Mhm.
I know um, about, like, how that can lead to just unanswered questions, like what if I would have been more what if I all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So again, reverting back to prior relationships and situations and trying to not fall into those same bad habits. I think another big lesson too is just, um, as somebody who kind of like in my profession, I kind of like solve problems
Mhm.
and relationships and people, like, I can't have that same approach. You know what I mean? Like,
People are not problems.
they're not problems, and they're not like puzzles to like figure
Yeah.
out, right? Even if we just talk about something like crying, right?
Yep.
I think a lot of times if men are in relationships with their partner and they see them crying, like we naturally want to like solve that problem. Why are you crying? What can I do? What can I go solve,
Mhm.
right? As opposed to just sitting there and being like, okay, you're crying right now.
Yeah.
Well,
A witness to it.
I'm gonna sit here and watch you cry, or I'm
Yep.
gonna sit here and just be here with you.
Mhm.
Having that just approach, I think one allows the other person to flush out and feel what they're feeling,
Yep.
and then that is also going to develop a sense of an appreciation.
Mhm.
Like, wow, I can be even more vulnerable in front of this person, or I don't have to worry about like, oh gosh, I'm about to cry, and let me stop my emotional
Yeah.
feeling for the comfort and just to not make somebody else feel some type of way like they have to again solve some problem of mine.
I mean, if you go back to 20 minutes ago when I was tearing up, you didn't have to do anything. All
Yeah.
you had to do is stay present
Yeah.
and like witness me.
Right.
And I've recovered. My nervous system has got back on track, and like me crying just means that like I need to release emotion.
Yeah.
And releasing emotion is healthy.
Exactly.
And like I continued to stay and engaged in our conversation because I felt emotionally comfortable and safe to do so, because you didn't like flinch, you didn't try to change the subject. You really didn't have to say much at all, just allowing it to be.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like one of the morals of this whole catch up is like just letting things be sometimes is the play. A lot of times it's the play.
Yeah.
And it's hard because I think we're so, I mean, when we talk about baggage or trauma or whatever, I think we're so used to reacting. Like our subconscious is like, okay, this happened to me before, now I have to do this. And it's like sometimes it's just about letting it be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think again, she just does a really great job of that. And even like now, as I think about her and I think about her situation, I'm at peace with it, you know, because I know that I can honestly say that I've brought my genuine self. I've been present. I've smiled. I've had fun, and I've also realized that, wow, I have the ability to, you know, like have somebody's heart, right? Somebody, given my situation, given how in my head weird and abnormal it is, given like it's like all these things that I was, you know, embarrassed about and maybe shameful about, somebody still saw that and was like, yes, I want that, you know? And so it's like, oh, okay, so all I have to do is show up, you know? And I think that's just a much more easy place to be in. And it allows for the true foundation to be built, right? We don't have to like fake or create some type of scenario and then try to build on that like false groundwork. It's like, this is who I am. This is who you are. This is how we met. This is the day we met. And we've been building on that ever since. Even as I think about, you know, in the near future, I'm getting ready to go out of the country for work. And again, that's obviously like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? You know, she was like, well, what's going to happen is you're going to go to Australia and probably have a lot of fun and have new experiences. Period.
Yeah.
There's no and, there's no but, there's nothing to add to that. There's nothing to figure out. And so having the other person, again, just reaffirm and just bring me back to where my feet are and be present is like, those are the things that I'm now just more aware of that are helping me and are allowing me to just figure this out too, you know?
Because I don't think there's anything wrong. Like, I think it's very healthy and normal to say, I mean, you're in your 30s, she's in her 30s. Like, you're coming to a relationship and a situation with experiences.
Yeah.
And those experiences, good or bad, or however you want to qualify them, are still your experiences. And I think it takes a really like emotionally healthy person to say like, I know that this is how I'm showing up and this is kind of what I'm navigating. And both people like not trying to ignore that. I think it's really healthy. Like, we don't show up in relationships like this cookie cutter perfect version. That's not the life that we've lived now at this point.
Right.
You've broken off an engagement. I've been divorced. Like, we have some shit.
Yeah.
And that is okay.
Right.
Like, I think the acknowledgement of the shit and then being like, hey, this is what I'm working on
Mm-hmm.
creates like 90% of the health.
Yeah.
And then that other 10%, I think this is not good math, but like that willingness to say, I'm going to witness and I'm going to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
But both people have to be willing to say, I want to work on this.
Yeah.
And I want to work on me and like showing up. Because when two people come together, those are two unique experiences and people at that given time.
Yeah.
So like you are not the same person that you were 5 years ago.
Exactly.
And yeah, I like obviously we've had conversations and now we're seeing each other in person, but like
Mhm.
even just the growth that I've heard from you in the past like month
Yeah.
and really the cognition of like, I think I heard from you a lot of like, well, I don't have my job figured out.
Yeah.
And it's like, but do you ever have your job figured out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's constantly evolving and growing and building and doing different things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I sure as hell hope I don't have the same job that I will have in 15 years.
Yeah.
So like I really like also I think it's a combination of both of you two. I obviously haven't had the pleasure of meeting her yet, but I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Mhm.
But like you being able to say this is the situation and I might have built this like worst case scenario or I might be building like trying to account for what's supposed to happen 6 months from now.
Mhm.
But the fact that you're like pulling yourself back, I think is pull yourself back in like the present moment.
Yeah.
I think is a real moment of growth that I've seen in this experience that I'm super proud of you for.
Yeah. For sure. Thank you.
And a testament to her too, because she's building that with you. Like
Yeah.
you are co-creators
Right.
for building that. And I think that's what's so important. I really
sure.
liked, we caught up briefly yesterday, but I wanted to save a lot of the good stuff for today.
Mhm.
But you had made a statement.
Yeah.
And she had kind of said like, well, why are you asking me that? Can you, I think that's a really good example.
Yeah. I mean, I was, again, I think operating from a place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So let me like throw all the worries and all the fears.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like,
Well, what'd you say? What was your...
well, it's happened a couple times actually, but
Yeah.
I think in this case, I was like, what's going to happen with this? Where are we going to live? Like, how would this actually work?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, like, where is this coming from? Like, why are you all of a sudden worried about this?
Yeah.
And I was like, because, like, aren't you? And she's like, yeah, but why? Like, especially at the time, we had just, like, had a really great evening.
Mm-hmm.
And the energy was kind of, like, really good. And then again, it's like, oh, my God, what happens if this, like, wears off? What happens if this lust wears off? And she's like, let's really talk about, like, why are you saying that?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a place of fear? What's going on? And I was saying all these things, hoping or thinking that she was like, oh, I feel the same way. I have the same worries. And then we're both going to be in this, like, let's try to figure it out space.
Fear swirl.
Fierce way. Like, what the hell? And she was just like, no, stop that.
Yeah.
That's, nope, right there. Like, we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying how you're feeling and what's going on right now? Yeah. Period.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And again, because I'm just naturally wired that way, like, sure, I was able to kind of come back and be present. But also, I think it was just me recognizing the internal feelings and them having to be projected on somebody that I'm, trying to build something with.
Yeah.
And that's not a good habit to have.
Mm-mm.
And if someone doesn't, like, show you those things or somebody doesn't, like, check you in those situations, it's very easy to just have that snowball into something bigger,
Mm-hmm.
Even one thing I noticed too, I don't like to talk about things unless they're, like, official, right?
Mhm.
So I've noticed that, I've told my close friends about her. I've told you about her, right? And so I'm talking about her in, like, the public space now.
Mm-hmm.
And that also is a little scary for me. It's like, oh my gosh, now other people know about this and they're going to want to know and they're going to follow up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, because they are operating from a space of, you deserve this.
Mm-hmm.
You should have this. Like, this is part of life, right? As opposed to like me just feeling like shameful, like I don't want to announce anything until like we may put a label on something,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And that's another thing that she mentioned too. Like, are we gonna put labels on this? We're gonna call each other boyfriend, girlfriend? Like, what's about to happen here? And
She posed that question, or you did?
I did, and I
Okay.
was like, do you operate off of labels? Like,
Mhm.
is that something that's important to you? And she's like, I mean, labels are labels,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to lose sight of like what's actually happening here,
Mm-hmm.
because she basically says like, I don't want to create that type of pressure,
Mm-hmm.
nor do I necessarily want to be like under that type of pressure, because I'll lose sight of the feelings and emotions that I'm having. Even for me, right? Missing somebody, or you know, wanting to do something for someone that I see myself having a future with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are emotions and things that have kind of been dormant for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of getting my training wheels back, like, dang, okay, I remember what this feels like, and I'm happy that I'm feeling it. But again, as my logic mind is like, okay, well, so what do you do with it? Where does this go?
Right.
What happens if you don't feel like this way next week? And all this like self-sabotage, you know,
Yeah.
just it's tough because it's a lot of unwiring for me to do.
Yeah.
And that's work that I'm continuing. It's a life's work, right? So
Yeah.
I also don't have to feel like that pressure of this needs to be solved in some finite amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just something that I need to be aware of. And when I see it and feel it happening,
Mm-hmm.
check yourself out of it.
Yep.
You know?
And there's going to be some days that you're really good at it. And
Yeah.
some days you're going to go down that rabbit hole of, and then what about this? And 2 years from now, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
And like, to have that variety too, and know what kind of like going off the rails feels like,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think is part of just being a human. And
Yeah.
you're going to catch yourself some days, and you're going to let yourself spiral some days. But the cognition, I think, is so important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because I think one of the other things too that I'm starting to realize is, like, if we just look at our lives,
Yeah.
right? We've done some pretty amazing things.
Yeah.
We've solved some big stuff, right?
Yeah.
So obviously a relationship is a little bit different, but it's still the same muscles that you have to work,
Yeah.
right? Something gets presented to you that's new or that you may not have a deep understanding of, and you have to find a solution, or you need to move it forward. And like, this is the same kind of case. So I need to trust that I have the like innate abilities to work on this and to find a solution that works for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
The same way, if I get presented a project at work, I'm going to get to the
You
solution.
have the tools.
You know? And
Yeah.
it's nothing that I need to like, there's no external place that I need to like go find it.
You don't need to somehow now get into a master's class on like how to be a boyfriend. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like that's not where you're at. Like
Right.
I think we have to trust ourselves that we will make the right decisions when we get to the intersections in which
Yeah.
we need to travel across.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and two, like I can't deny that, you know, I'm smiling more.
I knew that this was serious because I will have tact when I explain this, but like George and I, we are pretty consistent in staying in touch, and he
Yeah.
obviously knew I was kind of working through some things, and we both have like the utmost respect for each other and kind of the care of like returning messages and stuff, right?
Mhm,
So I never
mhm.
have to worry. Like I know that we're true homies because I'm not like, oh, I haven't heard from George in 3 days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's never
Yeah.
the case. But I didn't hear from him for a couple days, and I was like, bro, I need to talk to you. I need your opinion. And so I literally said, sir, put your clothes on, call me. I need to talk.
And it was so funny to receive that message too, because I had to like realize like, oh shit, like I've been in
Yeah, and we
I've
all
been
know
in
what
a
that bubble
trance.
feels like.
It's
That
like,
bubble
what?
feels so good.
I was like, days are all mixing together. I was
You're
like,
what year is it?
where we at right now? I was like, oh shit, oh damn, my bad. I didn't even know
Yeah.
I was out of the loop for a little while. You know,
that
I laughed so hard.
I said it a little bit more aggressively, but this is a family show, not really. But it's like, sir, I even laughed when I said it. I was like, sir, put some pants on and leave that dungeon for a minute and call me.
Hey, call me. We got some shit to talk about.
And you did. You
Yeah,
did.
yeah, immediately. So it was just like it was hilarious. But I think yeah, it's something that, I actually had a conversation with my mom maybe like about a year ago
Mhm.
where I kind of told her, I was like, she made the comment of like, "Hey, how's it going, George? Like, have you seen anybody?" Um, I basically told her, I was like, "Look, Mom, like my focus right now is you,
Mhm.
um, is figuring out like how I can make sure that everybody's good, getting more involved with work, and again, throw that love thing and relationship into the universe, and
Mhm.
if it happens, it happens." And she was like, "Okay, I hear you, but it sounds like you are putting that off because you don't believe it'll happen
Or that you deserve it.
or that I deserve it," which is really probably what that gets to, right? I
Mhm.
don't feel like I'm in a place that somebody would see me and be excited and want
Which
that, right?
breaks my heart because if we've received any feedback from this podcast, it's that George is a prize. Like, I have every girl, every friend of mine is like, "So, what's George's relationship status?" And I was like, I can't. I gotta like field them
Yeah.
now, and yeah.
I mean, it's work that, again,
But
it's
it is work for you.
yeah,
Like, to
it's
get back to
my
your point,
yeah,
yeah.
it's definitely my work that, again, I had to learn from my last experience, therapy, and just understanding like, look, I have the because oh, I gotta tell you this too.
Okay.
So
Last story.
last story.
Yeah.
This is another like, again, 100 points for we'll call her
Yeah. What's the nickname?
what is her nickname? I'll just call her um I will call her like she's a very calming kind of force.
Okay.
And so um
Can we call her Sunshine?
Sunshine.
Okay.
That's actually a great name for
Okay. Sunshine.
her. So we'll say like, so Sunshine, she told me that she had I don't remember when this was for her, but she had a lot of just negative self thoughts, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And I think it was, I don't know if it was a friend of hers or through her therapy. She was recommended to give those thoughts a name,
Mhm.
like all that negative, like I don't do this, I shouldn't get this, like form that into a person and give that person a name.
Mhm.
So for her, she named the person, I think her name is Maria,
Mhm.
right? So that when she's having those like negative thoughts, she can be like, "Shut the fuck up, Maria."
Yeah, Maria, you're a real bitch.
Right? And I was like, that's actually, let me try to do that.
It's so true.
And I was driving home one day and I again started to have these like negative thoughts, and the first name that popped up in my head was Samuel. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know if I had just like in my subconscious, maybe Samuel L. Jackson and his character, he's just very like,
Sure.
you know, he's just like straight to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just giving it to Samuel. And like, shut the fuck up, Samuel.
Mhm.
And that allowed just those thoughts to, again, they don't go away, but it removes that cloud of just that
It
negativity.
stops the hamster wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, another thing that's like, again, we've known each other for a month, right?
Uh-huh.
Very short amount of time. So there's also a fear of like, oh, this is too soon. We're hitting the ground real hard, and
Uh-huh.
it's like we're taking this roller coaster up, 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 and eventually we're gonna go down, right? But it's like, no. Again, you're acting off of fear.
But also the thought process that like relationships and life and anything isn't a roller coaster
Mhm.
is blasphemy. Like,
Yeah.
I truly believe that relationships start when you start having disagreements. And I know that that's kind of like
Yeah.
masochistic of me, but like I truly believe like how you rebuild and re-engage and create trust after a disruption or after like a break
Yeah.
is what builds actually like the real meaty
Mhm.
good stuff.
Yeah.
And like it's all fun and games. We love like that first month bliss, and I'm happy for you. Stay
Yeah.
in it as long as you can.
Hey, right?
But like the time that you have that like first real disagreement is I'm just like, okay, yeah, let's see
Yeah.
let's see
see
what
how
we
we
got
handle that.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what we're working with.
Yeah.
Because you're right. That'll be the true test.
Yeah.
Right. Or one of them.
And my warning, my my wish for you
Mm-hmm.
is that you also don't have to be like, well, this is the one and only test. You're allowed to learn and grow from them as well.
Yeah.
So if someone doesn't show up how you want them to, or you don't show up how you are, that you feel like is the best version of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
it's about articulating that
Yeah.
and saying like, this is what I'm going to do next time. Like, I'm
Yeah.
such a fan of like, here's what I learned from this. I mean, we're literally calling this episode life lessons.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I love learning from things, and I love being able to like grow and
Mhm.
change, because we've talked about it. You absolutely can, but you have to want to.
Yeah,
So
for sure. But no, a lot to catch up on, and again, this is happening in real time.
real time. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited. I'm obviously nervous, but like that is a signal, right?
You're allowed
you're
to
nervous
care.
about things that you care about.
Yes.
Because if I didn't give a fuck, right,
Yeah.
like we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
Would have been moved on.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So yeah, we'll see how this plays out, and again, I just have to remember to be present for it.
Mm-hmm.
Take
I'm
it
not
day
even going
by
to ask
day.
you like next steps or what's your plans, because I think that's what's so gorgeous is I'm happy for you.
You
And
know what my
like,
plan is actually?
did you say you do have a plan?
My plan
Oh,
is
no.
to check myself when I have these negative thoughts.
Uh-huh.
And my plan is to every morning just wake up and be like, ooh, what's gonna happen today? In a curious, loving energy. Not
You know
like,
how I would amend that just a little bit?
wow.
Let's see how good today can be.
Ooh, I like that.
Let's see how good today can get.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a much healthier way to live in general.
Yeah.
Whether it's relationships or not.
Well, you are out of the negative bucket now because
Yes.
you've redeemed all of those points. So you're in the plus.
Hey.
I appreciate you. I appreciate our listeners. I do have to give a little like mini shout out. If you are enjoying these episodes, if you like our podcast, this feels very like salesperson-y, not me, but like please comment, please follow. We are just getting started, and this is something that I find very fulfilling, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback and reception, but we really hope that it keeps going and that you like what you're hearing. So please do all those things. You can follow us on social media. It is _podcast on Instagram and TikTok. And yeah, like I also want to start engaging with the audience too, and kind of hear like their stories and experiences, because we're gonna run out of content here eventually.
Right. If
we
y'all
have
have
a
any,
lot of life.
y'all have any ideas, right? If there's anything that y'all want to talk about, we would love to hear about it.
Yeah.
And again, we just really appreciate all the support, because we are very vulnerable up here, but I think it's also empowering. Because of the feedback that we received and all the love and support. So appreciate y'all.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. That's another one.
Peace.
Peace.